Right, right. And so yeah, they hugged and John said, "I love you, son." And I was like, "Why'd you have to do that? You just went and proved me totally wrong."
I loved how bad that hug was, though. Like, it was so uncomfortable and awkward. Like I don't come from a good family of huggers. Like, we don't do it well. Like, when I hug my dad, and we do every time we meet, it's not like hugging like grandma or someone. You met people who are just great huggers. Like, it's an awkward hug. You can almost hear
Right.
bones chunking off. And that's what it felt like with John Dutton and Casey, which was on brand, I think, for John Dutton. He's not a practiced hugger by any stretch.
I am so excited for this episode today of the Dutton Rules because it's not like our normal episode. I have two guests with me today, or I guess technically two fellow podcast talkers or hosts. Anyways, I have Billy Dukes and Sterling Whitaker joining us today, and we are recapping season 5 of Yellowstone. So before I bring them in, just a real quick reminder, if you have any comments, thoughts, theories, we always are so game to read them and to honestly communicate back and forth. And you can even end up on this podcast. So staff at Taste of Country is where you can email us. And so let's go on and bring Billy Dukes and Sterling Whitaker in. We are grading Yellowstone season 5. This should be a juicy one. Hey, y'all.
Hello.
I was a little offended. She referred to us as guests. Guests.
Did you see how I stopped myself and then I tried to I was like,
guests.
What? Wait, no, they're also hosts.
I'm here every day.
I know. That was so bad. So bad. Well, I was introing you, so that my mind went straight into, and the guests are, no, you guys are more than just guests. I take that back. That's why my brain panicked and said talkers, which is also terrible. Okay. So,
talkers.
Fellow co-hosts.
Talkers.
Oops.
I'm just over here digging my own grave. Don't worry. If you don't hear from me, it's because I've gone into it. But season 5, let's get off of me. Spotlight off of me. I'm getting nervous over here. Season 5. What a time, y'all. What a time.
Are we in agreement that like what we just watched should be called season 5 and what we see next should be season 6? Is anybody buying this part 1, part 2 sort of dialogue from the Yellowstone universe?
I'm personally not.
It's weird, right?
I just kissed the air because I absolutely agree with you, Billy. This is season, what is going to come in the summer is season 6 in my mind. Taylor can tell me something different, but my mind says, welcome to season 6.
I don't want to get too caught up in the semantics of it all, I guess, but it just sort of speaks to maybe a little bit of a lack of a plan that everybody can kind of get on board. It's getting more complicated, and Sterling, you and I have talked about this kind of throughout the course of the season as they have more and more shows to develop. It's clear that maybe not all the answers are in place from the get-go. They're kind of making it up as they go, which, is the natural chain of movement, I think.
This is a season where the person who's writing this is, to my mind, is stretched, and doesn't have a clear focus on this one show.
Yeah.
Billy, you had asked me a question before, and I hope you can remember how you worded it, but I'd love for all of us to answer this question. You had asked me in one of the previous podcast episodes, was it like, who's my favorite character, or who, like, character-wise development have I really enjoyed watching? Do you remember roughly the question that you asked?
I think I asked you something along those lines, like, whose journey are you enjoying most this season? Like, which character is sort of capturing you for season 5?
I'd love to turn that question to y'all. I mean, I will also answer it, but I'm nose going and not going first. Who would y'all say was that for season 5 of Yellowstone?
I'm enjoying, I guess, Kevin Costner and John Dutton's development, I guess, because he is going through something that we never really foresaw for him. He's softening in a weird way. He's becoming more reflective. He's interacting with his kids in a real different way. We're seeing him with some emotional moments with Beth. We saw a thing, and Adison, you and I talked about this a while back, and I boldly predicted we'll never see Casey and John hug it out. And then it's like they It's like they watched like they listened to the episode and said, "Oh yeah."
Taylor's quickly writing it in.
Right. And so they hugged, and John said, "I love you, son." And I was like, "Why'd you have to do that? You just went and proved me totally wrong."
I loved how bad that hug was, though. Like, it was so uncomfortable and awkward. Like I don't come from a good family of huggers. Like, we don't do it well. Like, when I hug my dad, and we do every time we meet, it's not like hugging like grandma or someone. You met people who are just great huggers. Like, it's an awkward hug. You can almost hear bones chunking off. And that's what it felt like with John Dutton and Casey, which was on brand, I think, for John Dutton. He's not a practiced hugger by any stretch.
Well, exactly. I mean, let's be honest. If that scene had been one of those, hugging your grandma, this beautiful embrace, it might not have resonated the way that it actually ended up resonating, where it just hits you even deeper because you're like, this is so awkward. This is not natural, but it's so tender,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take it next and answer your question. I'm going to say Monica. I feel like she has kind of developed fully now, and her path has been sort of a long, arduous one. Like, at times, and early in the show, I thought her character was flat. She didn't have great lines. The acting wasn't fantastic. It's really developed, and she's not nearly sort of that whiny character we had in the seasons like 2 and 3. Now she's almost like the mature adult in the room. She has some wisdom she offers. She's confident, which is unusual because she just went through such a tragedy. Like, when she comes on screen now, I really find myself looking forward to it and paying attention.
And I will say, well, as y'all both know, Monica was someone who was kind of like, meh, consistently throughout Yellowstone. And even the internet was meh about Monica. Yep. But number one, not only has she grown on me for those reasons, Billy, but I will say the internet, I can't say that the internet's done a 180 and said, yay, Monica, we love her. But it does seem, specifically in the last few episodes of season 5, it seemed like people were softening to her and weren't as hard of like, what is this character doing on this show?
Yeah.
Do you think that's because we've seen Beth like soften to her on screen? Like, Beth has almost given everybody permission to embrace Monica a little bit more?
Maybe.
I think for me, it's been more so I've seen Monica step up in ways that she hasn't before, and kind of had that conversation with Beth, which I guess technically would be, us giving permission, or her giving us permission to kind of like Monica. But I feel like just between, the John and Monica scene where he was like, I'm going to ask you instead of Casey because I know who, runs things around here, if you would stay at the ranch and all that. And just the conversations that she's had have been really deep. I don't know. I've liked the development of her character in that way. I don't know if it's because of Beth necessarily. I think Beth's conversation and those things with Beth were just like an added asset to me softening to her.
She had that good conversation with Summer as well about, like, first she busted Summer's chops about not peeling potatoes, but she also kind of told her a little bit about the history of it when they were at the cemetery. So yeah, she has kind of had a lot of important conversations. It's a good point.
Yeah.
True.
I'll go. Well, I guess there's no one else to go, so naturally I'm going. I really taking one for the team over here. I would actually have to agree with Sterling on his. So mine was also Kevin Costner, John Dutton, and I had that in my little grading, which we'll get to in a little bit, of my kind of the pros of season 5. I really enjoyed watching him, kind of like Sterling said. I saw more of an emotional, almost like true, like him as a father at the end of the day, the emotion behind that and all that, where I've seen him more as, the leader of the Dutton Ranch, and almost treat his kids a little bit like a business, not business deal, but co-workers, let's say, where especially the end, between the awkward hug and just even that conversation with Monica, I felt like I was seeing him play a fatherly role and the emotions behind that, which I really enjoyed seeing, and I didn't necessarily expect.
So one thing to that point, we've seen a number of flashback scenes with young John Dutton that show that like harsh side, like the harshest side of him. So I think that kind of helps accelerate that sort of what we see as sort of this transition to a softer man. It's because it's contrasted by Josh Lucas's John Dutton, who's a monster, really.
True.
Speaking of flashbacks and softer side, do y'all think, and this is kind of just a hot take for what's to come in the summer, do we think the setting up of the Rip Beth flashback scenes, their young love, Carter and his new bae are kind of similar on, her little feistiness, his little, just young love. Do you feel like the flashbacks there and then the Carter and his new girlfriend relationship going forward will bring out the softer, more fatherly side in Rip?
Possibly.
I don't know if that's in there.
Okay.
Like, because
Billy's not sold on that.
No, because who would have taught Rip how to be soft? Like, he's never had a role model that's shown that's had any sort of softness or kindness. Like, he's been nothing. It's been Bunkhouse Men and John and then Beth, who's like the one woman in his life. So I don't know if it's in him.
You're a fun sucker. Okay.
I'm sorry. You're not going to see Rip cry, I don't think.
Dang it, Billy.
No, probably not. Probably not.
Well, I want to know from y'all, as we went through, we did this for season 4, season 5. If you could give it a grade, A, B, C, D, A-, what would y'all give it? And kind of what were your pros and cons, or why?
I want to like this season more than I do so far. I give this a B. I feel like it's been an off season. It's been up and down in a way that other seasons have not been, I guess. There's been whole episodes that don't seem to serve a narrative purpose, And then there's other episodes that a lot gets done and a lot gets moved forward, but we've had big wasted opportunities in some episodes this season, I feel.
I'll go next. It's interesting because in talking to Sterling, like, I got at the sense that he was harsher on this show than I was, especially episode 8, right before the break. Like you seemed like you were really upset about how that kind of wrapped up and thought it was a bit of a mess. And I wasn't nearly as offended by how it wrapped up. To me, it seemed like a mid-season finale and not a season finale. So I didn't mind kind of how it all kind of came together. That said, I'm actually giving it a harsher grade than you. I'm going to give it a B-.
Okay.
And B is kind of for Beth in this instance. And you think about kind of what has happened this season so far. It's almost overwhelming. Like, John becomes governor. Casey and Monica lost their baby. Monica's been reinvented. Beth was in jail for a night. There was this whole thing with the wolves. Sarah Atwood is involved. Brucellosis. Everyone's going to Texas. And it's like been 8 episodes, and that kind of scratches the surface of it. And some of those plot lines have been really good and interesting. Like, I think, like, Beth getting in trouble, that was pretty cool. That was fun. It was new. The development of Monica, like I said, I've really enjoyed. And there's been a lot in the show that kind of taught us something about ranching and about native life, like the scene where Monica cuts her hair and like the whole funeral process. That was really informative. I really enjoyed that. So that to me is what Yellowstone does at its best, is it sort of in a way entertains, but it also sort of teaches about different cultures. But there's just too many loose threads. I mean, Beth had Jamie nailed to the floor, that whole yes ma'am scene. And then she just seems to have totally forgotten about him, because after that, she wasn't anywhere near him. She had no idea where he's living. Like, she was a terrible babysitter. Right. The biggest one has to be her realizing that Sarah Atwood is not her real name, but then never went anywhere. Like, that seemed like a really big thing to follow up on.
Right.
But nothing. And I think there was some more. I mean, specifically 2 episodes. I think it was episodes 4 or 5 or 5 or 6 that were just so Beth heavy with the summer fight, and everything Beth said was looked like it was meant to belong on a t-shirt. Those to me were like really, really low points, like D-level episodes that mixed in with maybe a few A's and a couple solid B pluses. So that's how I get to B plus. As far as everybody going to Texas, that seems like a kind of a stretch, but I'm willing to be patient to see how this whole Texas sort of narrative plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we have what, B plus B minus, right? So far?
I gave it a B.
Yeah, B. Okay. Yeah, I'd say I came up with, at first I had A minus, and then the more I was looking kind of at my pros and cons, I ended up switching it to a B. And so here's what I loved about this season, or this first part of this season, is number one, I loved the potential setup for the hitman to kill, the theory that I had of how we potentially have a setup for Summer to end up being killed when the hitman thinks that it's Beth. So that alone, I was like, I'm here for this if this is what this is going to be, and loved how we kind of ended on that. I really enjoyed seeing character development from relationship wise from Casey and John, like I kind of mentioned earlier. Casey and Monica, I think with the losing of the baby, I got to see Casey, maybe his more relational side, you'd say, when it comes to their marriage, and just even him as a father with Tate and how he was, having those conversations. And I just really enjoyed them. And then also Monica and Beth, loved seeing that relationship towards the end where Beth opened up to Monica about her baby and, all the above. And so, or Monica opened up to her, and just that really sweet scene that they exchanged. So I enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed, I feel like this season, Bunkhouse last season was a lot of drama. And this season, I felt like it was more, it was kind of the reprieve from everything else, where it was kind of the one space that I was like, oh, okay, a bunkhouse scene. It's other than, I guess, the original, the first episode where they ended up at the bar and that, all hell broke loose. But it was a really sweet, like, I enjoyed those moments that we got to see of the bunkhouse, them being cowboys, the Abby and Ryan romance. I really enjoyed that. But the cons for me were, I was so over the Beth and Jamie drama, kind of similar to what you said, Billy, of at some point I was going, all right, we are just wringing this towel dry. Like, I get it. Like, let's just put some good therapy on it. And, a lot of these issues could have been fixed. Like, now we're just dragging this out for what feels like no reason. I just got a little tired of that. And even the governor drama, and John, clearly we know that he is not wanting to be in this role to really truly be governor. I felt like we just spent a lot of time on those two topics where I felt like there was a lot less drama of people taking over the Dutton Ranch and more drama. What I put down is I put more emotional drama rather than land drama, which is fine. I just think I would have kind of liked maybe 50-50, where there were many episodes similar to what Sterling said, where I just felt like it almost just felt like we needed an episode. So here's just some random stuff to talk about. Like, we didn't necessarily, like, if it hadn't been there,
That's right.
I wouldn't have lost sleep over it. So I'm giving it a B.
I think if, like, the show, like, at a certain point watching the show, like, you accepted that certain things happened because there'd be a payoff as to why they happened down the line. But I think that kind of, they've kind of lost sort of that sort of trust, because there were some scenes from season 4 that never paid off down the line.
Yeah.
So now things like the Sarah Atwood not being your real name, or even the Beth and Summer fights, which, by the way, if Summer had 9 years of Jinjitsu, she would have mopped the floor with Beth. I mean, it wouldn't have even been a fight.
That's right.
This was not
That's right.
a realistic
Are
scene.
you
But,
well versed in that, Billy?
there's just a lot of comments about it in social media and such. But, I can't trust that that's going somewhere, that ultimately I'm going to go, oh, okay, this is why that needed to happen. Like,
right.
It's, it's a trust thing a little bit, and that's been eroded a little bit this season, and to a smaller extent last season.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Ooh, tell me. What's your question?
Who is everyone's favorite new character?
For me, I guess it's Sarah Atwood. She's just interesting, and you don't know where she's. You still really can't tell if she's really into Jamie or if it's all just a manipulation,
Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards manipulation, but you're right. It is. There is still
I'm
that sort
not
of.
on the love.
Probably.
I'm not on the love boat train by any means. I call some BS there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like John's assistant, Clara. Every time she's on screen, like I kind of smile because she just seems like a solid chick. Like you would want to have beers with her, and like she takes care of her business on both ends. Like I like her. Like even John's like, you know what? We're staying at my place. Pack a bag. She's like, okay, packing a bag. She's ready to go. She's up for anything, that girl.
Yeah.
Billy, you took mine. You saw my hands fly up in the air. That was also mine. Because I really, specifically why I say that is the moment that she really got me was when she was like, I'm going to go with you guys on this horse, on the branding cattle journey. And she held her own. And even John was like, have you done this before? And she was like, heck yeah. But yeah, I didn't see that coming. So I was like, man, she can hang. She can hang. I like her.
Right.
Teeter's pink bear is a close second for me. I really liked that bear.
But she's not a new character. Oh, you like the bear? Or I'm just going to say, Teeter's not a new character.
No, the bear.
The bear, yeah.
Bear.
I don't know where I saw this, but someone like there was like an outtake or something, or like maybe a picture from the set of it was a picture of Lloyd sitting next to the pink bear, and he had like its arm around the pink bear, kind of hugging
funny.
it. It was just the most bizarre thing in the world.
I really they're not new characters, but I did really like. I was so here for, which I guess technically we don't know if this romance will continue, but Abby and Ryan romance. I just enjoyed it. But actually, I enjoyed that. But the relationship that really sent home for me was Colby and Teeter. Specifically, right before she's about to go off to Texas, and Colby's, going out after her, and she goes, I love you. Which sounded like she was gasping for breath, but all that aside, I was like, are we on the Titanic scene where you're about to go into the ocean? All right. But I really enjoyed that. I hope we see more of them. I love a Jimmy Emily moment, but I think I could do away with them and say, okay, let's have some more Colby Teeter.
That I love you reminded me of like Jerry Maguire. You complete me.
Maybe that's where she took the notes from. That's what she was watching the night before that scene. Okay, Sterling, I've been wanting to ask you. There's some rumors going on with good old Kevin Costner, and if he's leaving the show, if it's not. I know you're well-versed in this entire topic, so I would love for you to kind of shed some light on what on earth is happening.
Well, early on I predicted that my big, bold prediction is that his character would die this season and he would leave the show. And I'm going to stick with that because I think I can mount a case for that. Kevin, in recent interviews, has refused to confirm another season on his part. He was asked straight out, and he didn't say he wouldn't be back, but he didn't say he would. He said in an interview recently that he only ever intended to do one season, and every season since then has been an add-on, basically, On top of that, he is very, very distracted. We know that right now. He's directing and producing, and I believe even starring in a big, giant, multi-part feature film called Horizon right now. And, we've had reports from what Lainey Wilson said, and also Orly Gottesman, who plays Haley, the love interest for Carter, also said they've never even met him. Whereas past seasons, people were saying he spent so much time on the set and would go around and shake everybody's hand every day. He's barely there. They're flying him in and flying him out just to do his scenes and get out of there, basically, So clearly his attention is very, very diverted, So for those kind of facts just on the ground, I think pretty clearly he's not as invested as he has been in past seasons, and I think that will lead to him going. On top of that, it seems like they're subtly trying to wrap the character, to me. We were talking earlier about how the character has become more reflective. We saw scenes with him and Beth where he's reflecting on her mom and memories that he doesn't want to share and that sort of thing. Yeah. We've seen him reflecting on I have one kid. What did he say? I have one child that I pity, one that I regret,
And one that I envy.
and then there's Beth, whom I envy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then we see the thing with him and Casey where he says, I love you, and they hug it out and that kind of thing. It just seems like I almost wonder if he's not aware of his mortality. I wonder if he's not sick and just isn't saying so, you know?
Interesting. Cancer returned or something along those lines?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I think.
Interesting.
That would be a bummer of a way for him to die, though, wouldn't it? Cancer? Like, if he doesn't die violently, I'm going to be bummed.
Throwing in the towel, there's not more blood and guts.
Well, I mean, kind of.
Right?
I mean, if he just dies naturally, I feel like that's not fitting of how he should die. It's almost like, and I haven't watched all of this series yet, Breaking Bad, but like I'm imagining if Walter White dies, it's got to be bloody and deadly. He just can't, the cancer can't return and just take his life, or to some degree. But
right, I got you.
Don't spoil the ending for me. I'm only through season 3 on that, by the way.
Okay. Yeah.
I see all your points. There's not one big red flag or one big sign, but there is sort of, the water does seem to all be flowing in one direction, and I don't think that's just a lot of speculation or sort of trying to make up things. There seems to be a lot of validity to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Do you think he dies then at the end of season 5, like season 5 part 2?
I think so, because I just don't see another season in this for him. You know, there's more than just Horizon that he's doing. He's also co-producing a film with Morgan Freeman. Am I right about that?
Dang.
Something like, yeah, he's got a lot of irons in the fire. You know, the truth is the heat from this show has reignited his career, it's brought more attention to him than he's had in a decade. And he's toward the end of somebody's working lifetime. You know, he's within 5 to 10 years of normal retirement age. So at some point, you're going to prioritize your own thing over somebody else's thing that you're just acting in, you know? And so that's part of my reasoning that he'll depart.
Well, shows have gone on without the stars before. The Office lasted another couple of seasons, I think. That was the most obvious example. But I guess there's probably been a few others. Roseanne, after Roseanne left, the remake, the Connors continued to exist.
Right.
I mean, Yellowstone's a little bit higher caliber of a television program than the Connors. But the point remains that the transition can be made. Could the show go on another 2 seasons, 3 seasons without him?
Maybe not 3 seasons.
I could see 1
I
to
think
2 seasons, possibly.
Yeah, I could see 1 season. Because you still have enough dramatic characters. You got Beth, you got Rip. You've got enough things going on that I think you could. I would still watch.
That would be a hot mess of a season, wouldn't it? I mean, that would just be just in terms of like loose plot lines and Beth just off her rocker. Like, I feel like that would just be one wild season.
I could picture it though.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm still sticking to, who did I say was going to die at the end of this season? Did I say Jamie?
Well, yes, but we also kind of marinated on Lloyd.
I'm not so hot on Lloyd.
Yeah.
You know, we marinated on Lloyd for a lot of the same reasons that Sterling makes about Kevin Costner's John Dutton, just the reflectiveness of Lloyd's character. But I'm not as sold on Lloyd dying at this point. His role has been kind of really diminished this season. But the Jamie Beth fight, that has to come to a head with someone dying.
Well, and really, if we're just going back to kind of the little Easter egg of the promo graphics that we've seen in the past, 1883, Elsa wasn't there. And in this, Yellowstone, Jamie isn't there. So I would think Jamie, just if we are going off of the track record there, I just want to know what happens with this hitman, y'all.
You know what I'm curious to see is when the 4-6s show starts to kind of intersect with the Yellowstone. Like, it seems that's why they're going to Texas, to kind of introduce that. I almost half expect the 4-6s show to kind of come during this break, but we haven't heard anything that's going to happen. But I really have no idea what that show is going to be about. Like, all we know is it's at the 4-6's ranch. They do a really good job down there, it seems like. But, like, what's that program? Like, what's the seed of that drama? Because it doesn't seem like there's a land fight or anything natural happening to build a show around. So what are we talking about?
I didn't think
the
about
beef
that.
packing industry?
Honestly, maybe.
It can't just be guys riding around, right?
No.
It's going to be solely
fence
focused
and-
on Jimmy and his love life. No, that would be boring,
boy.
actually.
Right. I mean, it can't be that. So
It needs another star. Like, we need a big name on that show, I feel like. Because it's going to be on the Paramount Network, not just Paramount Plus. So this is essentially, I think, going to be the show that they hope replaces Yellowstone.
Interesting.
I thought they said 2023 for 4-6's, but
We still got time.
well, plenty of time, obviously. Yeah.
Hate to point out the obvious. We are in January, so
We are in January.
there's still
How do we
time,
feel about
many months.
1923?
I'm enjoying it. And that's a very rare statement, considering I did not like 1883. I'm really liking 1923. I'm here for it.
I have a question for you, Addison.
Hit me.
Okay, so last year was our first year doing the podcast, and we did a lot of video, and you dutifully watched 1883 week to week and put on a nice smile about the show. And, we didn't say a lot of mean things about the show. I'm like a 1 to 10. Like 1, it was a chore. You hated it. Like you hate an ex-boyfriend who cheated on you. And 10, you loved it. Like, what was it for you? How painful was all of that?
It was a 5.
Yeah.
I'm giving it a 5. And I think this is like 1923 has a lot of death in it, but let's be real. 1883, I mean, every single episode, I was like, oh, there goes another pivotal character. Oh, there goes someone else. Oh, all right. Like, there was just so much death where I genuinely, after the episode, I was like, let me turn on something funny or happy or, where it was just heavy. But at the same time, I really enjoyed watching Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, their characters. So that's why it didn't go lower than that. Sam Elliott, really enjoyed them. But it was just the heaviness where at least 1923 has some... Oh, sorry, there goes my washer. Laundry's done. Where 1923 has a little bit more joy. Like, they go into town and we're watching, the new and cool things like washer and dryer. Dryer was not there yet. Washer come around and a fridge come around. I was like, oh, these are cool, monumental things in history laced with some death. But man, 1883, it got a good old 5 for me because after I was like, either I need to be sponsored by Kleenex at this point, or I just need a good rom-com to turn on after the show.
Yeah.
But you loved it, Billy.
Well, I did love it, but every time you're absolutely right. And by the way, I didn't really understand the degree to which I was torturing you by making you watch, but every time there was joy on 1883, they killed it. There was
That's true. That's true.
Ennis killed him. Elsa killed her. Everybody who brought you some sort of smile, short of Faith Hill when she got drunk with Rita Wilson. Like, that was the one joy that survived.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and look, in 1923, Jacob, but there's too many J's here. Jacob didn't. You think that he dies? In 1883, he probably would have died, but he lives.
Right.
You see? Like, we're already on a better road.
On an upswing.
Okay. Well, we'll see how it ends. Let's see how it ends. staff@tasteofcountry.com is the email address. That's where we do questions, comments, answers, and corrections. No Q&A this week as we have a little bit of a different kind of episode, but we'll bring that back, and we'll also bring back trivia in the next week or maybe after 1923 returns, which is on February 5th. That's when we get episode 5.
Well, thanks, y'all. That was Billy Dukes and Sterling Whitaker, my co-hosts on the Dutton Rules podcast.
That's right.
Or talkers, like I said in the beginning. The Dutton Rules podcast is another juicy Townsquare Media podcast. Thanks, y'all.
Catch those springtime vibes all over Arizona. Break out of the winter blues by hitting the water at one of our lake and river parks. Take a hike among the wildflowers. Just make sure to stay on the trails and leave the flowers for the bees. Discover Arizona's best kept secret and visit azstateparks.com/amazing to start your springtime adventure.